The hospital emergency ethics committee room fell completely silent as Dr. Jasmine Crockett stood at the conference table, her voice steady despite Dr. Samuel Alito's third interruption within 5 minutes. For months, the conservative medical ethicist had been making increasingly controversial public statements about experimental treatments that raised questions about whether doctors should prioritize traditional protocols over innovative life-saving measures. Today, as Crockett presented her case for using an unapproved neuroregeneration technique to save a comatose patient, Alito had grown visibly frustrated with her careful breakdown of the medical evidence. Dr. Crockett, that's not what the Hippocratic Oath demands, he had just stated dismissively, cutting her off mid-sentence. The packed committee room held its breath as Crockett paused, her expression determined as she looked directly at the ethics director. She opened a medical case file that had remained closed until this moment, removed a single brain scan, and began speaking in a measured tone that instantly commanded attention. What happened in the next 30 seconds didn't just silence Dr. Alito. It revealed a truth that would echo through the medical community for years to come. Before this watershed moment, Dr. Jasmine Crockett had established herself as a brilliant surgical mind long before becoming chief of neurosurgery. With experience as a former military field surgeon who had performed emergency procedures under fire, specializing in traumatic brain injuries, she understood medical ethics with a depth that few hospital administrators could match. Though she now ran one of the nation's premier neurosurgery departments, she had never lost her willingness to take risks when lives hung in the balance, including this case of a 16-year-old girl whose family refused to accept brain death as final. Meanwhile, Dr. Samuel Alito had been making headlines with increasingly conservative positions on medical intervention. At a recent American Medical Association conference, he had made remarks suggesting doubt about experimental treatments, raising eyebrows about whether he could remain objective in cases like the one before the ethics board today. Several complaints from families had been filed, but the hospital's lack of clear oversight on the ethics director had left these concerns largely unaddressed. Medical pioneers understood that treatment protocols needed strict boundaries, Alito had stated in a lecture just 3 weeks earlier. Modern attempts to characterize traditional caution as heartlessness would have troubled them. The remarks had drawn criticism from trauma surgeons across the political spectrum for appearing to prejudge cases likely to come before the ethics committee. Behind the scenes, Crockett had been carefully preparing not just her medical arguments, but also research into the historical context of neuroregeneration therapies that Dr. Alito claimed were too experimental to consider. As both a surgeon and a dedicated researcher, she brought a unique perspective to the intersection of medical innovation and patient rights. The committee room was packed with medical staff, patient advocates, and hospital board members. The hospital board chair, Elena Kagan, had granted extended deliberation time given the case's life or death implications, and expectations ran high. When Crockett approached the presentation screen, many whispered that Dr. Alito, known for aggressive questioning of progressive physicians, would likely dominate the exchange. The stage was set for what many expected would be another example of the increasingly divided approach that had come to characterize modern medical ethics debates. As Dr. Jasmine Crockett began her presentation, the atmosphere in the emergency ethics chamber was charged with tension. Unlike previous doctors who had been frequently dismissed by Dr. Alito's rigid protocols, she opened with a clear, compelling story about the real-world impact of denying experimental treatment to dying patients. "Madam Chair, and may it please this committee," she began, her voice confident and measured. "The oath to do no harm is the foundation upon which all our other medical principles rest. When 16-year-old Maya Johnson entered our ICU 3 weeks ago following a catastrophic car accident, We witness not just a tragedy for her and her family, but a test of our commitment to healing. Several committee members nodded slightly as she established the human stakes, before pivoting to medical analysis. Dr. Alito's report argues that our hospital protocol regarding experimental neural therapies grants him unlimited power in rejecting innovative treatments. However, this ignores both the American Medical Association's compassionate care guidelines and the historical context in which Dr. Alito interrupted, his tone dismissive. The text of the protocol is quite clear. Hospital policy gives the ethics director primary authority over experimental procedures. Isn't your real quarrel with medical standards themselves? The interruption came just 90 seconds into her presentation, but Crockett remained composed. Dr. Alito, I'm not quarreling with medical standards, but rather offering a complete reading of them. Hospital protocol does not exist in isolation from the emerging science on neuroplasticity, which fundamentally changed our understanding of what constitutes irreversible brain death and when innovative intervention becomes medically justified. She continued by carefully explaining how recent breakthroughs in neural stimulation had specifically revolutionized coma treatment, citing both international medical trials and peer-reviewed research from Johns Hopkins and Stanford. Hospital Board Chair Elena Kagan nodded appreciatively at the scientific evidence, while lead attorney Brett Kavanaugh made notes as Crockett built her case for why Maya Johnson's specific neural activity patterns suggested she could respond to the experimental electromagnetic pulse therapy. Dr. Alito interrupted again. These are merely theoretical possibilities, doctor, not proven treatments, he stated firmly. Every experimental procedure carries risk. Unless you can show guaranteed success, which our evidence fails to do, these decisions belong to established protocols, not individual physicians' hunches. Crockett calmly redirected the conversation. With respect, Dr. Alito, this committee's precedent in the Ramirez case established that even without guaranteed outcomes, physicians can pursue innovative treatments when traditional approaches have failed and families provide informed consent. This isn't about my hunches. It's about documented neural responses that suggest consciousness may still exist behind what appears to be brain death. She pulled up a series of brain scans on the large screen, showing anomalous patterns in Maya's neural activity that defied conventional understanding of coma states. These delta wave clusters appearing during her mother's voice recordings, these theta bursts when we play her favorite music. By every traditional measure, Maya should show zero higher brain function, yet she responds. For the first time, several committee members who had seemed ready to side with the conservative approach leaned forward with visible interest. The scans were undeniably compelling. The question before this committee, continued Crockett, her voice gaining intensity, is not whether we should abandon medical caution. It's whether our definition of hopeless has kept pace with our scientific understanding. 20 years ago, we would have declared these scan results impossible. 10 years ago, we would have called them meaningless noise. Today, emerging research from Tel Aviv University and Cambridge suggests they may represent a form of locked-in awareness we're only beginning to understand. Dr. Alito shifted uncomfortably. You're asking this committee to authorize an experimental procedure based on speculative interpretation of ambiguous data. The risk of complications is zero, Crockett interrupted, her patience finally wearing thin. Because Maya Johnson is already clinically dead by every standard you've ever upheld, Dr. Alito. Her family is planning to disconnect life support in 48 hours. The electromagnetic therapy I'm proposing carries no additional risk because there is no meaningful downside beyond the status quo, which is death. The only risk is to our institutional comfort with letting her die when we might have the ability to reach her. The silence that followed was profound. Even Alito seemed momentarily stunned by the directness of her argument. Crockett wasn't finished. She opened her case file and pulled out a document that several committee members would later describe as the turning point. This is a letter from Dr. Robert Chen at Stanford. Dr. Chen pioneered the electromagnetic therapy protocol I'm requesting permission to use. He's flown in specifically to assist with Maya's case, at no cost to the hospital or family. He's standing by right now, waiting for our decision. She placed another document on the table. This is a consent form signed by Maya's parents, fully informed of all risks and the experimental nature of the treatment. They understand the odds. They simply refuse to give up while any possibility remains. And then came the moment that would define the entire hearing. Crockett looked directly at Dr. Alito and said, "I also